Welcome everybody, my name is Paul, and a lot of people have seen various my sites online and so on, and I do quite a few book reviews and so on, and I'm a very big fan of books. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of saving books. I'm 71 years old, and I was an early adopter of the computer age, and it was so nice to be able to save all your files on a disk and everything like that. And we started thinking about technology instead of actually physical books. Now, the problem with that is that I read across an interview some years ago, and this guy was talking about how our digital age, we're just storing our information and our valuable information, including our finances, on this technology that totally depends on computers. And I've been working with computers for a really long time, and boy, they can really mess up bad, or you can lose all kinds of stuff. I've lost all kinds of photographs and documents and so on just because of a computer crash. So I want to talk a little bit about the importance of saving books. Please save good books, because sooner or later we could and probably will get some kind of an electronic crash of the internet and so on. And even now, in many parts of the world, depending on where you live, you could be way out in a rural area, you don't even have that, or you could be like, up in a mountain somewhere and you don't have any cell phones up there or internet, or there's a lot of different possibilities exist right now for the need of a physical book. And why are they so important? Because right now, we are beneficiaries of people who wrote things in stone, and they recorded things in very peculiar ways. Some of them actually wrote on tin and with gold, or they did geometry and they did all kinds of art and so on to tell us our own history. And our generation, our life now, so much of our information is so digitized and extremely vulnerable. And meanwhile, if you go to a thrift store and so on, there's thousands and millions of books just being thrown away every single day. And, they're not reprinting a lot of these books because why bother? Nobody's going to buy them, you see? So, again, without getting too passionate about this, please save really good books. Now, I'm going to go through a few here that I can recommend, okay? The types of books to look for. And, of course, there's all kinds of crazy books as well, but there's things that might really help us in any kind of a transition that we're going through. I have 7 grandchildren and 3 children, and I wonder what's going to happen to them in the next 50 years. I mean, what kind of computers are they going to be having? Or are they going to be robots, or what's going to happen? So again, back to the books. Now, if you find in a thrift store some of these books, okay, this is an old style history book, and it's written in language that they don't even bother with today. They know people don't even know how to read properly half the time, especially long words. But there's valuable information about the history of our planet and our species and our nationality and our countries and everything. It's very important, because if we don't understand our history, we're just living completely blind, and there's landmarks that are being destroyed right now and have been for centuries, really, getting rid of our past history. But the people, they built in stone, and they wrote in stone, and because of that, we have some records. Now, I'll go through these books really quickly here. Just the type of book to look for. Origins, okay, the history, the English, the language, okay. Our words in English came from all different sources, and it's very fascinating, because analysis of language and the history of language helps understand where people came from and their history and everything, and the kind of words that were common and so on. So you get one of these older books. I know it's really complicated. You don't have to read it from start to finish. You just get some of these kinds of books around so that you have a reference point, and you can learn things that, you won't find all this translated on the internet, okay? There's stuff you just don't get on the internet, and that's a good thing. So just save the books. Again, Indo-Europeans, the history of Europe, a lot of people don't realize this, but India was a very ancient culture. India had a long history, and it's not like it is now. There's a totally different thing going on there in the Indus Valley in Afghanistan, and all that part of the world. But anyway, all the influence of the ancients, spread westward up into Europe and so on. And this is a very fascinating book. Now, again, this is the type of book to find. Just keep a few of these kind of books around because you're not something that everybody wants to read, but it's really important to keep these books. Real quickly here, maps of the ancient sea kings. Even Columbus and all the ancient navigators, they went around the world. The Chinese went around the world. The Phoenicians went around. I mean, there's old maps that still have Antarctica on it. We discovered it in 1820, supposedly, and there's maps older than that show Antarctica. It wasn't very accurate, but there's a big blob there, and they said, well, there's something down there, and they knew it already. So, how countries developed, how civilization developed has to do with their a lot of sea voyages and transportation and long journeys across land using elephants and camels and so on. But the seas were the key to all kinds of riches. People went and found copper and gold and all kinds of stuff because they had maps. You won't have a GPS sometime in the future. Okay, so real quickly here, tools. Boy, there are people in the past that would just kill for having some of the tools that we have in our yard, in our garage. I mean, just like we got all kinds of amazing tools and knives and saws and everything. And a lot of people don't even know how to use them. And power tools, someday we won't have power tools. It's very possible that, a lot of people don't have access to very good power tools, especially the battery kind. And you got to throw away the batteries. And old-fashioned good tools. People build whole houses. How do you think they built the cathedrals? They didn't have power tools and screwdrivers. They built those things over a long, long period of time. So learn how to use tools. Now, along that line here, Practicing Primitive. This is kind of a fun book. It tells about how Native Americans and people around the world used tools like bones and various kinds of plants and trees and shrubs and flowers. And they actually wrote on leaves and, made knives with stone. And it's amazing. I mean, without the ingenuity of the people long ago, we wouldn't even be here. Man, the average day today, most of us, we wouldn't survive 2 weeks in the wilderness. But even the people who came here in America, they had to make friends with the Indians because when you come here from Europe and then a lot of the conflict, it wasn't about conflict. A lot of people got along, okay? I'll share our technology, you share your knowledge, and that's how civilization progresses. But knowing how some of the people lived here for a long time, I went to the Adirondack Museum one time, and they were talking about how the natives lived here for a long, long time in America, upstate New York and the mountains, and they had a lot of free time. They knew in the springtime certain things were available for food, in the summertime, and they would harvest a deer and store it up and everything and put salt on it and all kinds of stuff they did, building shelters and so on. They had to live for thousands of years, just simple stuff could come in handy someday. A little more up to date, not so primitive, but man, for a long time, our parents' generation, my parents' generation went through some severe hard times in the 1930s and late 20s. It was hard, and they didn't have internet and all these fancy cars and all that. They lived out in the country. They had to use a tin can just for a cup. I mean, they had to learn how to fix their tractor and build things and fix things and all kinds of stuff. And some of these older books, this is like from the 50s and 60s, and they got all kinds of dimensions and, exactly how to build certain things. Could come in handy around the homestead, learning how to fix your house. Another really fantastic book, Back to Basics. This is, I think, from the 80s, but it's been a long print. I don't know if they print it anymore. Nobody is interested. All kinds of stuff, from sheep to horses to tractors to, outdoor camping and cooking and preserving meat and growing gardens and all that kind of stuff is in a book like this. And I live in a homestead in Virginia, and I've told the people about this book. It's amazing. Beekeeping, how to make your instruments, how to run a wood stove, how to cut your trees and prune them, and all that kind of stuff. Really important stuff that, even in the modern era, it really pays to know some things that'll save you a bucket of money over the years, and then you'll feel really happy because you won't need to depend on some handyman, Another really quick book here, Earth Ponds. Out in the country, you can build a pond and you can have your own source of water and wildlife and everything, and people did that, So this is a fun book right here. Now, just real quickly here, I'll run through a couple more. Birds. It's really helpful to know what birds and various kinds of animals and what they eat. If you follow certain birds, you'll find a place, oh my God, there's a whole tree full of flowers and they're eating all the berries and everything and they're eating the fruit and, you find out their migration habits and what they do in the different seasons and so on. Fascinating to know all this stuff. Again, forest trees of Virginia. Where I live in Virginia, there's a bunch of different kinds of nut trees and various fruit trees, and there's a pawpaw and lots of berries and raspberries. And yeah, they had to depend on all this stuff. For a long, long time, they didn't have to have a grocery store, so they had to know, okay, those are the nuts that fall in the American chestnut. You can find still some of them out there in the woods. And every single year they drop like pounds and pounds of those beautiful chestnuts, so you can eat them and store them, and they last a long time. You can make you can make bread out of ground flour and acorns. I mean, this is really good stuff to know. So I'll leave it there, kind of. I want to just emphasize again, please collect these old books. I have a little library going on. I've given away a lot of books, and I have books on beekeeping and so on. And maybe I don't do all that myself. I even have books on knitting, and no, I don't knit. You see, but for a long time, knowing how to sew and doing those kind of things was super important. It still is in many parts of the world. And you can't just go online and look it up if the power goes out and so on. So save some of these really good books about how to do things and nonfiction, a little bit about our history and our language and so on. And so there's an intercultural exchange, because there is a variety of ways why an internet system, an electric system could go down. And it does go down. There's wars, there's catastrophes, there's natural disasters, there's storms, there's all kinds of reasons why we can lose that contact with the digital content, see? So get some of that tangible stuff in your hands in your home and share them. You don't have to have like duplicates of every book, but if there's certain books that we have around for a reference, like I have a beautiful, beautiful color book of the whole human body. God forbid, not on the internet, it's right in my hands. I can look at the page and say, okay, I know how my body is. I know if there's people who can really benefit from knowing, like, how to take care of your cattle and take care of your cows and how to fix your home and so on. So, again, without belaboring the point, please collect some books, save some books. And I love to hear book recommendations. And I'm thinking of having a contest out here. People who listen to certain videos, if you tell me the titles of the books that I mentioned, then maybe I'll give away some of these books. But I have a nice collection here. And I'm also on Hip Camp. That's another story. But we have a little place here where you can come and enjoy the nature a little bit and the area around the Blue Ridge Mountains and so on. So thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you in some of my other videos and a lot of my other book recommendations.